call this special council meeting to order.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Zanko. The council does now go into closed session at 5:06 to discuss the following. Pursuant to Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization. Re Healthcare Services proposal.
Any questions or comments with respect to the all those in favor? Councilman, can you have the resolution revised from closed session?
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Zanko. The council does now rise and reconvene from closed session at 5:57 p.m. with report as follows. Whereas in consultation with the Community Health Services Coordinator, members of council understand that as many as 11,000 residents in Fort Erie do not have a family practitioner, and there is the possibility of a further gap with pending physician retirements. And whereas the town of Fort Erie has been approached by proponents to establish a primary care clinic within the municipality, and whereas the town of Fort Erie is committed to recruiting and retaining quality physicians for the community and actively seeking family physicians to join the existing medical community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council authorizes the entry into an agreement with the Urgent Care Center, or Urgent Care Niagara Falls Incorporated, to facilitate a financial partnership, and further that council directs that the draft bylaw with the agreement attached thereto reviewed in closed session be included in the December 10th, 2018 regular council bylaw package as bylaw number 152-2018, and the confirmatory bylaw be renumbered accordingly.
Questions or comments with respect to the resolution? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. So you have the resolution to approve the special council meeting?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Butler, that council adjourns at 5:59 p.m. to reconvene into a special meeting of council on December 10th, 2018.
Well, we have 4 years to get used to the idea.
Yeah, it's showing.
Yeah.
Not the oldest in years, but. Well, one time we had a 19-year-old.
You folks ready? I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order. I want to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is a traditional territory of the Shawanoton, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe people. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, your worship.
There are no addendums to this evening's agenda. Just one announcement. I want to congratulate the new regional chair who was elected last Thursday, Jim Bradley from St. Catharines, and wish great good fortune. And I want to acknowledge that Councillor Tom Encina, new regional councillor, is here this evening as well. Congratulations. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? There being none, there are some upcoming meetings. There's a public meeting with respect to short-term rentals on January the 14th, 2019. I presume that that will be in this council chambers. There's also a public meeting with respect to proposed amendments to the development charge rates and policies under the Development Charges Act of 1997, again on January the 14th. Again, that will be here in the council chambers. And then finally, there's a schedule of budget meetings for 2019. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they start with the council in Budget Committee number 1 meeting, which is Wednesday, January the 23rd, 2019, and we'll be dealing with water and wastewater operating budget and user fee analysis. There are other meetings that continue on through to the adoption of the general levy by bylaw in April. There are no public meetings this evening. There is a consent agenda. Does anyone wish any of the items in the consent agenda removed? Councillor Noyes.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I would like number CS 22-2018, CS 21, oh, they're all. The award the 2019 insurance and risk management services.
Okay.
The CS 21-2018, the development charge background study removed.
Okay.
For discussion. The FES 04-2018, notice to terminate the fire dispatch services agreement between the town of Fort Erie and the city of St. Catharines. And PDS 81-2018, 3,189 Niagara River Parkway Development Agreement.
Okay, so just for clarification, you don't need to remove an item from the package if you want to ask questions. You do if you want to ask a lot of questions. So that some of these you may have a question or two. They don't necessarily need to be removed from the package.
I have a question or two.
Okay, well, we'll try this, and then we'll see how we make out. This is the first meeting where we have new councillors, so we'll do this, and perhaps staff will decide that there'll be fewer reports in the consent agenda. So, Councillor Noyes, you have the resolution that we deal with the consent agenda items. So that should be modified to remove from the consent agenda the items that you've just referred to. So you would move that council approves the consent agenda items with the exception of the ones that you've taken out, specifically referred to. Okay?
I don't have a seconder yet.
There's a councillor sitting right beside you. I'm sure he'd be happy to second that. You don't need one. This is a council and committee meeting, right? You don't need a seconder.
Don't need a seconder, okay. It's my first meeting in 8 years, so be patient. So you want me to remove the
items that you've referred, so you can move that we approve the consent agenda items less the specific reports you referred to.
Okay.
Yes.
Just for some clarification to make what we've been doing, Councilor Noyes. Any questions can be asked, but my experience is if you wanted to vote on something separately, for instance, if you agree with the consent agenda as presented, then you're going to vote in favor of everything. But if you want to vote on something separate because you don't agree, then you want to remove it. If you're just going to comment on it and ask questions, right, then that's from my experience over the last few years. So unless
That's fair enough, and that's
Yeah,
good
if
comment. That's
we
good
intend
guidance.
to vote,
So let's proceed the way we are right now and see how we make out.
Okay. Moved by myself, that council approve the consent items with the exception of the items that have been removed for discussion.
You need to refer specifically to them. So they're CS 21.
CS 22, 2018, CS 21, 2018, FES 04, 2018, PDS 81, 2018.
Okay, and we'll deal with those individually. So the consent agenda package as amended is on the floor. Are there any questions or comments with those items that remain within the consent agenda? There being none, I'll call the question then. All those in favor of the recommendations contained in those reports that are in the consent agenda? Opposed? Is that a late yes or an early no? Okay, that's unanimous then. Okay, so Councillor Noyes, do you want to move any of these reports that you've asked to be taken out of the consent agenda?
Move them to be considered, we can ask
One at a
questions
time.
then? Okay, so, yes, move myself that CS 22-2018 be awarded the 2019 Insurance and Risk Management Services be put on the floor.
Okay. Do you have some questions with respect to that?
Yes,
CS 21.
CS 22.
Sorry,
Oh, no, I'm
CS
sorry, 21. You're right, it's 21.
You did say 21.
Wait. 22 is first, okay. Okay. Okay, does this coverage, through your worship,
No,
to,
Okay, go ahead.
through your worship to Mr. Jansen, does this coverage extend to the two incorporated businesses, EDTC and gaming, or do they have their own coverage?
So now we're talking about CS 22.
Yes.
Mr. Jansen?
Through the mayor to Councillor Noyes, it does not include coverage for EDTC. It does include coverage for the Community Gaming Corporation.
Okay, does this, if I can continue,
Yes.
since it is included, does this, the cost of this insurance for the gaming corporation, is this included as an expense to them in their budget?
Mr. Jansen?
The in short, no. This item, or we don't allocate a portion related to that corporation specifically to that cost center.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Noyes?
That was my question.
Does anyone else have any questions with respect to this report? All those in favor? Sorry?
just for some clarification, and I did speak with Jonathan earlier today, there will be no gap in our insurance coverage, obviously, right?
Mr.
Is that
Jansen?
correct? When we're changing over?
To the mayor to Councilor Luberts, yeah, with approval of this report, we will work together with towards a transition effective January 1st. So we do expect there to be a good transition.
Anything further, Councillor
Well,
Luberts?
during that transition, we're still covered though, right?
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the recommendations in the report? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Noyes, did you want to put CS 21 then on the floor?
Yes, Your Worship, put on the floor CS 21, 2018, Development Charge Background Study combined. I have a question. In regards to that, how is the public going to be made aware of this, and can we make sure that they have given adequate notice of the development charges and the increase?
Mr. Brady?
Sorry. I believe the finance director would like to.
Mr.
make a comment.
Jansen?
Through the mayor, Councillor Noyes, there is a communicating results section that does highlight some of the required communications, most of which are statutory requirements under the Development Charges Act. So there will be notice provided for the public meeting, of course, which we've heard earlier tonight. There'll be, as well, we will be sharing the report with a number of stakeholders of the town. Beyond that, I think that's traditionally the route we've taken with providing public notice through the council meetings.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you. Further question. The chart from the Niagara Region Development Charge Rate Comparison indicates that we will be, the Fort Erie will be one of the highest in development charges.
Can you refer to the page that you're on?
Page 13 of 15.
Yep.
I think there's only one that's going to be higher than us, which is Lincoln. And I'm just wondering how that may affect new builds or attracting developers to this area.
Well, I'll let Mr. Jansen respond to that. This depicts Fort Erie if the recommendations contained in the DC charges report are eventually adopted. Many of these still have this year to review theirs. Mr. Jansen, did you want to weigh in on this as well?
Yes, that's an important point in terms of the timing where most, I think I mentioned in the report, 6 of the 9 municipalities with DC rates expire within the next 12 months during 2019. So we are the first out of the gate and certainly are going to be jumping ahead in that comparison, but we would expect to see a number of others have some similar pressures and some similar experience with larger changes in the coming year.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you for that. I have one further question. The recommended increase, and I may be off a little bit on my percentages, is about a 45% increase from what the current development charges are. Again, how do you feel the climate is out there for that kind of increase?
It's 46%, and that's for residential.
Residential,
You're
yes.
asking Mr. Jansen?
Yes.
I don't know if he knows what the climate is out there, but he can answer if he's got an inkling.
Certainly, that's what we expect to hear from feedback as we release this study publicly. It'll be on the town's website, and as we have the public meetings, we welcome all input. The comparators are, I think, one of the best indications of our experience here in the town compared to others. But the public process certainly will assist in giving us some feedback.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you.
Any other councillors? Mr. Jansen, I've just got a few questions as well with respect to this, and I would have asked for it to be removed from the consent agenda because it is a big issue. The bottom of page 4 of the report, there's a discussion about wastewater, the wastewater system, the cost of reducing inflows and infiltration being part of the charges that can be recognized for development charges purposes. And there's an indication that about $44.8 million has been identified as potential wastewater infrastructure works that could qualify for development charges in the future.
That's correct.
So that would be a major component, I would think, of the allocation of costs when we're determining what the new development charges will be.
Sorry, just to clarify, those costs were not included in the calculation of the fee. So that was one way, and Kelly Walsh can speak more to our strategy and approach with that, but that was deemed to be one area where we could reduce some of our longer-term capital costs with this study.
Mr. Walsh, what will the strategy be going forward to generate that $44.8 million?
Mr. Mayor, there is no strategy to generate the funding. As council's aware, we have about an annual $5 million problem with respect to inflow and infiltration, extraneous flow in the systems. So we're going to be working through the existing rate-supported budget of our wastewater component to reduce those flows.
This is something as well that we've been working with the region on over the past several years because they have some programs that will assist and facilitate the removal of infiltration from wastewater system. Is that not correct?
That's correct. We apply through the region for everything we're eligible for. Most of the time we're successful in achieving those fundings.
Right. And I did have, and I'd raised before, Mr. Jansen, with you, some of the concerns as I had when the consultant came out and spoke to us last month about some of the aspects of housing, particularly the affordable housing aspect, the need for apartments in this community and how that meshes with the development charges that we currently levy and the ones that we may levy if this report were to be adopted ultimately without changes. Are there some comments that you can make with respect to things that we can do to try to address the need for affordable housing and a variety of housing mixes for seniors, people with lesser means, or for people that just want less space, a smaller house as opposed to a larger one?
Yeah, this report and the study itself is something that we have referred to the town's new Affordable Housing Committee. We did look in consultation with the region at one policy change to align with their own affordable housing measures in their recently passed DC, their DC bylaw. One is to exempt affordable housing projects related to their municipal housing facility bylaw, and the other is any funding agreements through the Niagara Regional Housing. Those are two things that you'll see included in terms of policy changes.
And these are matters that can be addressed as well through the public consultation process, I presume?
That's correct.
The other thing that I had raised before, excuse me, had to do with some of the commercial construction here, and the one example had been one of the larger stores had put up basically a lean-to or a roofed area to store some of their goods, which they sold seasonally. And they had to pay the same development charge as if it was a completely enclosed addition to the building. We're going to be able to address that.
Yes, we've made a note of that particular issue and we'll be reviewing that with the release of the study.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions that any councillors have? Then I'll call the question with respect to the recommendation in the report. All those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. Councillor Noyes, would you like to continue with FES 04?
Yes. That is a cancellation dispatch services agreement. Just to find my questions.
And you had some questions with respect to that report?
I do. I'm just trying to find them on this computer.
Okay.
What is the, through
Please
you,
continue.
Mr. Mayor, to the fire chief, what is the age of our current system, and when is a replacement expected, and will the new provider for dispatch be able to coordinate the existing system?
Chief.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Noyes. We've invested heavily in our analog infrastructure. Just as recently as this year, we installed our backup radio and repeater system at the Gibson Center with a new antenna and new cabling. Its expected lifespan is 10 years before we would have to make either software or hardware amendments. What I mean by that is our primary radio and repeater, which is at the Leisureplex, was installed in 1999. It was upgraded in 2013. They are upgradable. They have, that one particularly has 5 years left before we would change anything. It also has new cabling and new antenna. So it's light. We have a substantial life expectancy in the system.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. That was it.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the recommendation? None opposed, that is carried. And then finally, Councillor Noyes, could you put on the floor PDS 81?
Okay. The question I have for that one.
You have to put it on the floor
Okay,
first.
so I'm putting PDS 81 2018 Beam Road Development Agreement.
Okay, you're moving that. Yes, and your question?
Find my question. It's not always easy on this thing. I guess I'm questioning about the road and the construction of the road. Is going to be a rural road with asphalt?
Mr. Brady, can you address that?
Yes, absolutely. Through you to the councillor. The reason that the road is being constructed is because the Niagara Parks Commission don't want direct access from the severances that have been created to the parkway. So they want a road that runs parallel, and Beam provides part of that as a possibility. So it's being prepared to a rural standard similar to the existing roads that run parallel to the parkway.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you. One further question, and I don't know where it is on this report, but I noticed that trees are not included. Somewhere you put down that they're not going to be expected, or something about the tree. They're not going to be expected to put a tree or trees on. I'm just wondering, are we referring then to that when any lot's created in town, the person who's creating the lot has to pay for a tree, whether it's on that lot or not? Is this new subdivision, these 9 houses that are going to go, are they going to have to provide 9 trees or not?
Mr. Brady?
The issue of the trees would have been addressed at the time of the severance, and you're quite correct. Trees are required at that point. So this development agreement doesn't have to address any trees.
Okay, thank you.
So that would have been a decision made by the Committee of Adjustments?
That's correct.
Are there any other questions or comments by members of council? Councillor Luberts?
Yeah, are we in the regular consent agenda now?
Once we deal with this, we'll
all
be
the
done with the
reports?
consent agenda.
Oh, all right, okay, I'll wait.
The last report. Is that your question? Was that your question?
No, when the whole report comes out, I'll.
Okay, well, this report is on the floor.
All right, okay, and Councillor Noyes is finished
I believe you're...
with the ones
yes.
that she pulled. Okay, just the engineer's appointment for Bay Beach. Report IS 46.
Okay, we've already voted on that. We voted on all of the reports that weren't removed.
Okay, all right, okay, 6, I'm sorry. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so are there any further questions on PDS 81? There being none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the recommendations in the report? Opposed? That is carried. So that completes the consent agenda. And that takes us then to corporate and community services. Councillor McDermott, I'll hand the chair to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Corporate and Community Services now in session. There are no presentations and delegations. We have Report 8.2, CAO 20-2018. Review of the memorandum of agreement between the town of Port Erie and the Economic Development and Tourism. Your Worship?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move option C, the recommendation contained in option C. And if I could, I'd like to speak to that very briefly.
Feel free.
I'm moving that primarily because I see it as the way that we can move forward to review the delivery of economic development services in the community. It's been a long time since this has been done. It seems to me that this provides us with the latitude and the ability to do an open review. It doesn't exclude the possibility that of the alternatives that might be available for the delivery of economic development services. An arm's length corporation such as we have now might very well be the model that we end up with. It could even be the Economic Development Corporation or Tourism Corporation. But I do believe that this would provide us with the latitude to make some changes with respect to governance, membership, that type of thing. So I do believe that this is the most prudent course for us to take, and that's why I'm moving option C.
Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In light of that option being moved by the mayor, I'd like to amend it. So my amendment to option C would to direct staff to arrange to bring in outside consulting, an outside consulting firm to consult with council and to review with council the delivery of the economic development services to the town regarding various alternatives and the pros and cons of each.
So for clarification, is that in addition to option C? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor. Any comments? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I'm in favor of both the amendment and C. And I think that it will lead to hopefully a better communication between the two of them and better EDTC, better economic development. Thank you.
Councilor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just for some clarification from staff, when we're looking at when you're looking at option C, it says to terminate subject to the requirements of the current agreement. And if we get the consultant, my concern is now we're getting into budgets, our budget deliberations, and how can we have a consultant come back to us before budget? We have to decide what we're going to do, right? When it, financially, right?
Mr. Cookett?
Mr. Crooked?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. From what I gather from what's been directed to me so far is that we will terminate the agreement, but move forward with hiring a consultant to look at different governance models. As far as the budget goes, that is, we can move forward with a budget. If monies are required, we can always do a budget amendment, be it January, February, or when the monies are required.
So if I'm looking at this properly, then what I would see happening here is we terminate the agreement, and under the current agreement, and then the EDTC will operate as normal for 2019, and then the beginning of 2020 will be the start of the new agreement if one comes up. Is that what I'm hearing?
Mr. Cookett?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, that's absolutely correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm just going to point out there that I'm the new guy here. I'm suffering from a bit of a cold. I'm pretty sure I caught it from Regional Councillor Tom Encina there. He was sitting behind me during inauguration, so I'm going to do my best to try and speak slowly.
Spreading the blame already, huh?
I'm not opposed to option C in principle. I'm not opposed to doing a review of how we deliver economic development services to the town of Fort Erie. I campaigned on that. I felt it was very important that we look at all available options. And I went on the record saying that if I received a report that says that we should do something differently and it was a well-versed, well-documented, and well-referenced report, I would be happy to follow its recommendations. My concern with anything that involves option C is that there are unknowns involved with it. You know, we're hoping to go into here, you know, potentially in a negotiating position with the EDTC. And, you know, assuming everything works out well, that could be a benefit to the municipality. My concern is, what if it doesn't? What if they come back? You know, certainly I don't think anyone likes negotiating with a gun to their head. And that's essentially what this is. We're terminating the MOA, and we're telling them you better negotiate with us, potentially, or else. There are so many unanswered questions related to what happens if we execute option C. You know, certainly with regards to costs for the town, potential legal liability, the last thing I want to see us is dealing with a second lawsuit. There's a Niagara Corridor Development Partnership, and also the Niagara Foreign, or sorry, the Foreign Trade Zone. I'm not sure what happens with them. I like the idea of a review. I think it is very, very important. But in light of all these unknowns, particularly what is our contingency plan if the EDTC just says, we're done? You know, the shredded trucks are coming tomorrow. We have no continuity between what they're doing and what we're planning to do. I can't in good conscience support any option that includes C as long as those unknowns are on the table. If we get answers to those and they're detailed and sufficient, I would be more than happy to look into this. But I think as leaders sitting behind these desks, the onus is on us, especially on an issue that's as controversial and divisive as this, is to take a tempered response. and a managed response to ensure that we receive all the information we have to make an informed decision. And as it stands now, I don't have that information. I certainly understand why people feel the way they do. I understand why members of this council feel the way they do, but I just can't support anything that includes option C. And without those answers, I would be doing a disservice to the people who elected me to make decisions based on factual information. So I appreciate that this vote is coming up and that we're discussing it, but that's how I feel on the matter. Thank you very much.
Councilor Zanko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really struggled with this report myself, and I'm very interested to hear what my colleagues have to say. I know that the EDTC needs to be reviewed. There's no doubt. I heard that on the campaign trail as well. I heard from many constituents that they don't know whether our current model is the best model or a different model needs to be considered, and I very much support a review. I struggle with option C because of the word termination. The memory of agreement will be terminated. There's no negotiations with option C. And the EDTC as a whole is, there's many staff members involved. I feel that at the very least, we should try to engage in negotiations. We should try to engage in a review. There's so many variables here. We don't know with regard to the foreign trade zone, which is a concern. That was a big accomplishment that we've just had. There's just so many unknowns here. I'm fearful with option C that if we do discover down the road that this model is the best model, this agreement's already terminated. So I'm not going to be supporting option C. I would like to support option B if it's an option. I think that that allows for a open review. I would even like to make an amendment to option B if we get there. But I think that in fairness, and I don't know what repercussions are in store for us. This is the reason why, Your Worship, I won't be supporting your recommendation.
Your Worship?
Yeah, just very briefly to respond, I don't want to drag this out. Option C provides this council with at least some leverage. Once the review is done, we all agree that a review is necessary. And a review in the absence of terminating the MOU isn't really an effective review because it doesn't leave us with a position where we can negotiate if there were to be changes, if it was determined that an arm's length corporation is the best delivery model. It doesn't leave us with that leverage. So we would be proposing to enter into discussions or negotiations with virtually no leverage. Nobody negotiates with no leverage. And I've spent over 40 years as a professional negotiating. So that's really, I think we need to look at that in the broader context, because what we're doing here is we're stewards of the public purse. We're responsible for doing what's best for the community. And I think we have to do what is necessary in order for us to put ourselves in the best position to seek any service. Earlier this evening, we approved a recommendation that dealt with how we receive insurance services. And that was put out to an RFP, and that's done every 5 years. So that us reviewing how we deliver economic development services, to me, makes sense. It's due diligence, it's in the interest of the community. And putting ourselves in a position where we've got the most leverage that we can put ourselves in hand with makes sense. That's why I'm selecting C. I know that there could be a variety of alternatives because I've been thinking about this over the last little while, so I know that there are several potential alternatives how this could work out. I don't deny that there are some very valuable human resources at the EDTC, quite correct. I don't deny that they've done some very good work periodically, but there's some broader issues here with respect to the range of services, and so for that reason I moved option C and believe that we need to move forward with that. And I do, actually we're speaking to the amendment, aren't we? Actually, I think we're supposed to be speaking to the amendment, which I do support.
So I think the issue that I have is that, so a very smart man had said to me once that there's really no negotiations until someone says no. The EDTC hasn't even had the opportunity to be asked to work with us, to be asked to negotiate with us. It very well may be possible that we are forced to terminate the contract because they might say outright no, they're not interested in any changes or amendments. But I think that we've had this organization for a number of years. We've contributed funding for a number of years. I think that at the very least, we should offer them the option to negotiate with us and to review. And that's all I'll say.
Councilor Liberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think it's true that we've all struggled over this. I think everyone knows my position as far as the EDTC. But with the amendment and listening to the amendment, I think that when it comes to the unknowns and the questions, I think those will all be answered through the consultants, and that's, I think, what the amendment speaks to. Have a consultant come in and look at what we're going to be dealing with, and then while that consultant is doing their review, we can bring forward our concerns about the unknowns, and then the consultants can come back and report back to us and give us their opinions, and then we can make that from there, because I sit here and look around and I know that we've all got our own little idea about the EDTC, and same thing with the people in the gallery, and same thing with the people in the town of Fort Erie. But so let's put all those things aside and allow the consultant to come in and bring forward a report. The consultant is going to come back with the best option available for the town of Fort Erie. I think that's what we need to look at. We need to change the agreement. If you've read the agreement, I think we all agree it needs to be reviewed, right? And it needs to be changed. To amend it, you might as well bring forward a whole new agreement, because that's what's going to happen with the amendment on the agreement. So I'm going to support the amendment to option C, and then I have all the confidence in the world that the consultants will come back with the best scenario for the town of Fort Erie. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Noyes, and then Councilor Dubenow.
Thank you, Councilor McDermott. Again, I spoke earlier on this, but in reviewing the report that we have, the way the agreement stands now, there are several areas that need to be clarified, that are ambiguity that's found, and this will only move it forward. That with this review, with the amendment there, we are only going to move forward with this. In regards to B, really doesn't put us in a position to have a fair negotiation. I mean, the other party could say, well, go pound salt. You know, we're not willing. We like what we have, and we're not going to change. But with this, we open the door to discussion with the EDTC, and it'll hopefully be a win-win down the road. But we need to put ourselves in a position that we can demand that they negotiate with us, and that is what C will allow us to do. And we may find that the changes that we want aren't as extensive as we first thought because of the information we may get from the consultant, but I'm sure we'll land up with a much better product and a much better arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Noyes. Councilor Dubenow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I can't impress upon all of you enough as a new councillor sitting here dealing with what is probably one of the most significant decisions that we as a council can make, and that what me as a new councillor sitting here can make. And I have struggled with this very, very much over the last couple days. I cannot stress that enough. This is a very difficult decision with wide-reaching repercussions. I think all of us sitting here are on the same page that we want to deliver, we want to come up with a solution that best delivers economic development services to our town. I have no question of that at all, that we're unified on that. The issue is getting there. And as I had mentioned before, I take issue with the unknowns. To quote my father from many, many years ago, you hope for the best, but you got to prepare for the worst. And as it stands now, without having that information in front of me to know what our worst case situation could be, what the worst case ramifications could be to the taxpayer of this community, what the ramifications could be for the delivery of economic development services to this community over the next year even, or going forward with the continuity between organizations, or even if we keep the existing organization, what kind of damage that could cause with the relationship going forward. I want to echo what Councillor Zanko said earlier. My concern is the word termination and where that could lead us going forward with negotiations. It's the concern I have is that it's not going to be a negotiation, that we're going to be holding all the cards, that they have no way to refer back to us. And you know what, maybe that's what some people want, and that's fine. But I'm concerned with the ramifications from that. And to that end, as I said before, it is very difficult for me to support anything that includes option C without knowing the worst case scenario for us. If I had some of that information, I would be much more comfortable making a decision. But as it stands now, I have no choice but to not support the amended motion, and I'm sure everyone understands. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate everybody's comments around the circle here, and I certainly through conversations that I've had with certain members of council, have agonized through this as well, and I do believe that we are dealing with consummate professionals at the other end, and have had several conversations on that end as well, and I believe that regardless of the fact that this has come up several times, it's time to make a decision and to move forward with the best intentions. I do believe that we have to be conscientious of our word choices. Demanding is not a word that I would use. I would use the mayor's word, negotiations, and this is in no means getting rid of the arm's length entity. I think that that it's a review of the MOU, and I am hoping that that going forward there will be some positive uptake from this, and that's all I have to say on the issue. But other than I was very torn with this as well, and still am.
Oh, that's okay, thank you.
All right.
So we'll move the motion as amended. Favor? Opposed, if any?
Carried?
Yes.
It carried.
Now it's working. We'll move on to CS 20-2018-2019 budget planning and timetable. Can I get a mover?
That's all moved.
Councilor Dubino? So the recommendation is that council receives for information the 2019 budget forecast as explained in report number CS 20-2018 and quantified in Appendix 1 and 2, and further that council approves the proposed 2019 budget timetable as per Appendix 3. Any comments or questions? Councilor Noyes.
The only comment I would make is that I'm hoping that does show up on our e-blast or whatever, so that everyone does know. I mean, we can rely on the papers, but the papers are, we don't have one of the papers anymore. And so I think we have that e-blast that goes out, that we should make sure that those dates are included on our e-blast.
Mr. Jansen, you'll make sure that happens? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just to echo Councillor Noy's comments, just also with regard to social media, Twitter, Facebook, you know, I think it's important that we broadcast as much as we can, and I think we're doing a fairly good job of that. But just to further that sentiment, let's just continue the good work, and let's just make sure everyone knows.
Thank you. So we'll go to new business inquiries. Oh, did I call that vote?
Nope.
I'm sorry. My apologies. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Any comments with regards to new business inquiries? Councillor Dubinow?
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. Back at the beginning of the month, we held a public meeting here at Town Hall regarding the recent rash of break-ins that we've had kind of on the east end of town, kind of, you know, north end and along the river there. And during that meeting, I believe it was Inspector McCaffrey had mentioned that Niagara-on-the-Lake has had a very successful community safety committee that they've had established for many years. And he had mentioned that this was something that perhaps we as a municipality here would want to consider, among other things, to promote community safety and programs within our community that deal with that. So I'm wondering, and I'm the new guy here, so you're going to have to help me out how I go about doing this. I'm wondering if it's possible to have, I think it would be the CAO, perhaps prepare a staff report that outlines the details necessary to establish a safety committee for Fort Erie and how we would go about doing that.
Your Worship?
Yeah, might I suggest that before we get into a full-blown report, we get the CAO to provide us with some information from the regional police as to what would be involved in that, and then we can consider that and perhaps move forward with it. I think it's an excellent idea.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I believe that Councillor Butler was taking notes with regards to that during that town meeting, and I think you have their address or email address, or we can get a hold of them. Okay. Mr. Cookett?
Through you, Chair, to the Councillor. Following that meeting, I want to say a big thanks to the 3 police officers that were here in attendance. They did a fabulous job. We had a great turnout of 80+ people, so it was a great evening. We did take notes ourselves that evening about this safety committee that they have in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and we've already pulled off some information from them. We will bring forward, if it's Council's wish, a report with the information, and then if you want to move forward with the committee, we'd be happy to.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor, okay. Councillor Luberts and then Councillor Zanko.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it's appropriate to bring it up under new business in this subcommittee, but I've had a lot of discussion with residents in different areas of Fort Erie, specifically different wards. And one of the things that came up during the campaign as well was communication with your constituents in your ward. And I'm just wondering if it would be possible with our communications department if we could get ward-specific notices on our website. For instance, Ward 5. Tonight, there is, for an example, a report about the baby's drain. So now, if that could be put on our website, just for Ward 5, these are the things that happened in Ward 5 at the council meetings. And then they could get listed. And now the residents don't have to search through the whole agenda, search through all the bylaws. They can just go, what happened in Ward 5 lately, or Ward 4, or Ward 1, right? And they could be ward specific. Just wondering if that would be possible, if staff could just look at it as something that we could do, and that would help communicate with our residents a little better.
Thank you, Councilors. Mr. Cookett?
Through you, Chair, to the Councillor, it's definitely something I'll take back to staff and see if this is something that's easily facilitated and we can put up the reports per ward.
Are there any questions with regards to the business status report? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have a report coming forward on January the 14th with respect to the cannabis retail opt-out information. And it seemed to me that we had talked about having some type of public meeting so that we could hear from the public relative to their views on this. I'm sure we've all received some emails from people that are interested in what's going to happen, how is this going to affect their properties, what have you. So I'm wondering if we could ask the CAO if it was anticipated, or even Mr. Brady, if it was anticipated that there would be a public component on the 14th of January. It wasn't in the list of public meetings, but I do believe that we should engage the public on this.
Mr. Brady?
Through to the mayor, if council wishes to have that, there wasn't anything planned. I know the city of St. Catharines didn't have a public meeting, but rather had a poll. And I've just been informed that they'll be having a public meeting later, but they used the poll to deal with the question. So it's up to council. If council wants to direct us to use a poll, that would be great. I think that would actually be a more modern way of finding out what's going on. And if you want a public meeting on the 14th, that's fine too.
I think that there should be, Mr. Chair. I mean, I don't know what the rest of councilors think, but I do believe that we should. We've got a busy evening, January the 14th, but I know that there's lots of interest in this in the community.
Councilor Butler?
And just out of curiosity, what was the poll? What was the result of the poll?
I believe the result of the poll was no. Yes, that's my understanding. But it was a very simple poll. It was a very simple question. Yes, no. That's it.
Do you think we should have a public? So let's.
I think we should probably go with the public meeting then. We have concurrence around the table for that? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll leave it for
Okay.
the mayor to
Worship,
make
you
it.
wanna
It was
make a
his
motion?
thing.
I move that we have,
Go ahead, yeah.
I move that in conjunction with the cannabis retail opt-out information report coming before council on January the 14th, 2019, we have a public meeting that evening in the council chambers.
All in favor?
Just if I could, for some direction, in terms of notice that meeting, we will of course use our normal notice procedures, but we will put something in the newspaper as well.
I think that's advisable.
Okay.
Okay, this concludes corporate services.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. That then takes us to planning and development services, and that is Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Planning and Development Services is now open. There are no presentations or delegations. The first report is PDS-79-2018 Fort Erie Communities in Bloom Program, which was postponed from November 13th, 2018 Council and Committee meeting. Can I have a mover for that?
It's already been moved.
Oh,
Can I
sorry.
speak to it?
Yeah, sure.
So we have, the reason it was put over from last month was that we were waiting to find out how many people had applied for the Communities in Bloom Committee. Turns out that it's still a small number of individuals, but that small number of individuals is very, very much committed and dedicated to this initiative. They've asked if they could have until January. They'd like to meet with staff. They'd like to meet with me. I'd be happy to invite any of you to the meeting, but they'd like some more time to try to get this together. They have put years, literally years, into this program, which has benefited the community. So I'm hoping that council will agree to further defer this, and I would say that it should be deferred to the last meeting in January, which is Is that January the 21st? January 21st. I've spoken to it. I really can't move the adjournment.
Yes, it's my, yep, sorry.
Want me to move that?
Well,
Yeah. Go ahead.
Councillor Dubenow.
I want to echo just what the mayor said. I've heard from other people in the community as well who are very enthusiastic and do want to see this happen. I'm just wondering if I could ask one question of staff, and again, the protocol type thing. You're going to have to help me out here to make sure I'm directing my question to the right person. I know we've had an application process for the Communities in Bloom Committee. What kind of turnout have we received application-wise? Because I know I've spoken with some people who are very enthusiastic, but I'm just wondering if the applications we've received reflect that enthusiasm that I've heard.
I can speak to that if you will. It's my understanding there are a total of 3 applications for 11 positions. So if council determined to put all of those 3 people on the committee, there still would not be a quorum at any moment.
Councillor?
In that case, I think I agree that this should be deferred, and I'm wondering if we can continue to advertise the process to hopefully continue to solicit interest, because there's definitely enthusiastic people out there, and I'm hoping as more people talk about it the way they've talked to me, that there'll be more word of mouth in the community and more interest, and hopefully we can attract more applicants for that. Thank you.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you. I'm in support of the deferral too, and hoping that we will find more interest. I did want to comment also too that the Communities in Bloom project has caused a lot of initiations for a lot of ongoing year after year beautification of our town. I know the one in Stevensville, because that's where I live. The baskets, I'm sure, started with the Communities in Bloom and continue to this day. And there's a lot of public support for it. I know I get my letter every year asking for my donation, and I will say I don't think the amount has changed since the beginning. I think we're asked to do it, and we're asked to do it in regards to a loved one, in memory of someone that's lived in Stevensville, and that continues. It has a life of its own, and I would wonder if I always remember the bikes that are all decorated and that in Crystal Beach, and I'm sure that this is probably where it all started from, was a Community in Bloom initiative that has brought on these things. Now, whether we go into the contest or not, I'm sure that there would be reason to continue with the Communities in Bloom, perhaps not on a competitive level, but to continue to encourage the organization for the beautification of Fort Erie.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of council wish to speak? George? Councillor McDermott? Too familiar there with your first name?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Did you want to move it to defer it?
I'll move that.
All right. That will be moved to the last meeting and deferred to January 21st, 2018. All those in favor? Or 19. Jeez.
Such a good year, you want to do
Too
it
much
again?
on my mind. Okay. All those in favor? That is carried. That brings us to new business and inquiries. Any questions from council? No? Okay, moving on to business status report. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll hand over the chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. Are there any meetings scheduled? I don't think there are. Oh, cool. Infrastructure Services, I'm sorry. That's Councillor Zanko. And there are no delegations, there are no reports. I don't know how long it could be.
Unless someone has status with the business status report. Oh, Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam
yes,
Chair. Through you to Mr. Kelly. January 14th is the deadline for the road repair report.
Yes, we're, through you, Madam Chair, we're in the throes of finalizing our 2019 resurfacing list and a tentative four-year resurfacing list to be included in that report.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, and I apologize by calling you Mr. Kelly instead of Mr. Walsh. What is going on tonight?
Councillor Noyes.
Just a comment that I think we do have a strategic treatment.
December the 20th, yeah,
We do have a meeting coming up for strategic planning.
December the 20th.
Thank you. Does any members of council have any new business or inquiries? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is to Mr. Kelly. Mr. Walsh. Anyway, I've had some discussion with some people in Ward 5, and we had discussed this previously before the election as well. And I'm just wondering where we're at, and in regards to new rules and regulations for Bay Beach, and for improved security down there as well. And the reason I'm bringing it forward is we're all concerned, and we need to make sure that we have something in place that we can enforce for this upcoming season in 2019.
Mr. Walsh.
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't believe it's noted on the business status report. Yes, it is actually. So we will be bringing a report forward February 19th regarding staff's opinion on how Bay Beach should operate in terms of everything down there, which includes parking issues, for council's consideration.
Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much. And just, I guess it'd be a general inquiry for, and I wanted to wait to the end of the meeting, but am I reading the agenda differently? It was my understanding that even when we came, if it's my recollection rather, that even when we came to the council meetings, the report numbers would be highlighted blue. Wasn't that the way it was in the last term of council? Weren't they?
On the computer?
Or, no, on our yellow sheets, weren't they?
The agenda.
Or were they highlighted? Because looking at,
They're bold.
they were bolded. I'm just looking at the bottom of them. That's all right. No, if I was wrong, I just, when I looked at it, it looked like I thought there's something different on the agenda. Is that all right? All right, okay. All right, okay. That's it for me and Mr. Kelly. You can go home now.
I will pass the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zanko. So the December 20th meeting, which is the start of the strategic planning process, is scheduled to start at 5 o'clock, and it's here in Town Hall. Are there any other meetings? If none, I just want to comment that it's nice to see that there are press media here. I know Sarah Ferguson has been out recently, and we've had periodically others, but I wanted to welcome Richard Hutton. It's been a while since we've seen you, and I don't know that we've ever seen you in this chambers, but welcome. Well, hopefully we'll see you more often. Yeah, in court. Okay, motion to adjourn. Councillor Zanko. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. That then unfortunately takes us to the second special council meeting of the evening, and I will call that meeting to order now. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
There are no announcements, no addendum, no, are there any disclosures or pecuniary interest on the matters in our agenda? If none, then there are no presentations or delegations. Councillor Noyes, this is where you have the resolution with respect to the consent agenda. It's resolution number 1. You need a seconder for that.
Thank you, Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubineau that the council approves the consent agenda items as recommended. No,
Well,
that's not it.
okay, so at this point, are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? There being none, are there any questions or comments with respect to the items in the consent agenda? There being none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the consent agenda items? None opposed? That is carried. That takes us to a new business and inquiries. Are there any this evening? There are none, then that takes us to motions, of which there are none. Are there any notices of motion this evening? There being none, that takes us to consideration of bylaws. Councillor Butler, you have the resolution for first and second reading.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubineau, that the bylaw package containing 150-2018 to authorize the execution of a development agreement with D-Mick Properties Limited, Bruno Demizio, 151-2018 to repeal bylaw number 26-2015, council remuneration tax exemption, 152-2018 to authorize the entry into agreement with Urgent Care Niagara Falls, Inc. to establish a primary care clinic in the town of Fort Erie is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Are there any questions or comments with respect to those two bylaws? Then, Councillor Lubitz, I'm going to go to you for third and final reading of those two particular bylaws.
Just those two?
Just those two, because when we're finished with those, I'm going to ask the clerk about the
All right, okay, all right.
the third
Thank-
bylaw that we should be dealing with tonight, which is with respect to the medical clinic.
Well, we could do these two and
Hold
come
on a
back,
second.
do the third.
Yeah, okay, so that was
All right.
included. Okay, so do you have bylaw 152 in yours?
Yes, I have 152 as well, but I'll just do 150 and
No,
151.
do all three of them.
All three?
Yeah, I don't have exactly what you've got, which I usually do. So you go ahead with all three because
Okay.
we've done first and
All
second
right.
reading.
Okay, moved by myself and seconded by Councilor McDermott that bylaws number 150-2018, 151-2018, and 152-2018 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to any of those bylaws? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Councillor Noyes, you have the next resolution, which deals with the first and second reading of the confirmatory bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubineau that the bylaw number 153, 2018, to confirm the actions of council at its closed session, special and special council meetings held on December 10th, 2018, is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Councillor Lubitz, you have the next resolution.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor McDermott that bylaw number 153-2018 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. takes us into scheduling of meetings. We've already heard about the December the 20th meeting. There aren't any other meetings, are there? There being none, I'll go to Councillor Dubineau for the final resolution this evening.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that council adjourns at 7:20 p.m. to reconvene in regular meeting of council on January 21st, 2019.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, folks.